When counting down the greatest races in recent Formula 1 history, the 2011 Canadian Grand Prix almost definitely makes at least the top 5. It was a whirlwind of wet weather chaos, filled with spins, safety cars, and some sensational driving as well. I'm Ollie Wilson for GPFans, and this is a look back at the iconic 2011 Canadian Grand Prix. The Canadian Grand Prix took place on the 12th of June 2011. It was the 7th race of the season and the 48th Canadian Grand Prix in history. The race would count for 70 laps with a distance of 305.270 kilometres and would go into Formula 1's history books, but more on that later. Heavy rain showers had hit the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve throughout the day, so when the race was due to start at 1 o'clock in the afternoon local time, there was a lot of standing water on track. More rain was expected to arrive an hour into the race, which would cause another load of chaos for the drivers. The race started behind the safety car, even though it was dry at the moment of lights out. There was a lot of standing water still on the track, which caused heavy spray and certainly impaired visibility. All drivers started the race on full wet weather tyres. After 5 laps, the safety car came into the pits and the drivers were allowed to go racing. Sebastian Vettel held his position at the front of the field after the first lap of racing, while things in the back behind him were certainly changing, with drivers overtaking each other while others were struggling for grip and running wide. As Lewis Hamilton attempted an overtake on his teammate Jenson Button down the pit straight, he hit the wall. This caused Hamilton to retire from the race and the safety car to be deployed. Racing resumed on lap 13. Jenson Button was given a drive-through penalty for speeding behind the safety car, and Vettel began to extend his lead over Fernando Alonso and Felipe Massa. Drivers started switching to the intermediate tyres one by one as the track began to dry. However, on lap 19, the circuit was hit by a rainstorm, forcing the drivers that had pitted for intermediates to switch back to the full wets. On lap 20, the safety car was brought out due to the intensity of the rain, and after 6 laps, the race was suspended. For the next 2 hours, the torrential rain prevented a restart of the Grand Prix. At about 3:50 local time, the rain started to ease and the race was resumed behind the safety car. After 7 laps, the track started to dry enough for suitable intermediate tyres to be put on. At this time, the race had been going for about 3 hours and we were yet to hit the halfway mark. Over the next 30 laps, there were plenty more incidents. Jenson Button and Fernando Alonso touching, causing Alonso to spin and ended up beaching his car on the curbs, bringing out the safety car once more. Button started his overtaking sprint after a puncture that he suffered from that contact with Alonso and made up 7 places by lap 44. DRS was enabled 2 laps later, with Paul di Resta, Felipe Massa and Nick Heidfeld then all suffering damage to their front wings, the latter causing the 6th safety car of the session due to debris on track. On lap 61, Pastor Maldonado was also forced to retire after a spin on the wet surface at turn 2. Button was still making up places and overtook Mark Webber and Michael Schumacher on the same lap to take 2nd place. Di Resta suffered a puncture and was forced into a retirement as Button set the fastest lap while chasing Sebastian Vettel. On the final lap, Vettel had a lead of just under a second, but after hitting a damp section of the surface, the German driver ran wide at turn 6. This gave Button the opportunity to take the lead of the race on the final lap ahead of the Red Bull driver. The race went into Formula 1 history books as the longest race in F1 history, with a total time of 4 hours, 4 minutes and 39 seconds. The 2011 Canadian Grand Prix also holds the record for the most safety cars deployed in a single race at 6, and Jenson Button made the record for a race victory with the most number of pit stops during it. 6 pit stops in total, including one for a penalty. So, if you have some time to kill, it's definitely worth digging through the archives and looking back at the 2011 Canadian Grand Prix, perhaps Formula 1's greatest race in the modern era.